They fired me for being too expensive, forgetting that the insurance policy on our hazardous materials division is valid only if I am the designated compliance officer. My name is William Rourke. I'm 61 years old, and I've spent the last 34 years making sure radioactive material gets from point A to point B without killing anyone along the way. Nuclear waste transport. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. Most people don't think about it. They flip their light switches, charge their phones, run their air conditioning all summer. They don't think about the spent fuel rods sitting in cooling pools at 104 nuclear plants across the country. They don't think about the specialized casks, the route planning, the emergency protocols, the 17 federal agencies that have to sign off before a single shipment moves. I think about it every day for 34 years. I started at Meridian Energy 3 months after I finished my 12 years in the Navy. Nuclear propulsion specialist on submarines, the USS Helena, then the USS Olympia. When you spend that much time around reactor systems in a steel tube 800 feet underwater, you develop a certain respect for the material, a certain understanding. The office always smelled the same. Old coffee and ozone from the servers running our tracking systems. Fluorescent lights humming at that frequency that burrows into your skull after a few decades. Gray carpet, gray walls, gray cubicles. But the work was anything but gray. I built the Hazardous Logistics Division from nothing. In 1991, Meridian was a regional power company with exactly 0 nuclear transport capabilities. By 2024, we moved 847 shipments annually across 31 states. Class 7 radioactive materials. The stuff that glows in the dark if you handle it wrong. 0 incidents. Not one. 34 years. Thousands of shipments. Millions of miles. You know what that takes? It takes knowing which highways have weight restrictions that change seasonally. It takes relationships with state, DOT officials in every jurisdiction. It takes understanding that the route through Nevada looks shorter on paper, but adds 6 hours because of inspection checkpoints. It takes being the person who answers the phone at 3 a.m. when a truck driver reports a flat tire in rural New Mexico, and you have to coordinate with the state police, the NRC, FEMA, and the tribal authority whose land the highway crosses. That was me. That was always me. The certifications alone took years. NRC Radiation Safety Officer, DOT Hazmat Specialist, IAEA Transport Security Level 3, licenses in 31 states, each with their own requirements, their own renewal schedules, their own bureaucratic peculiarities. My wife Ellen used to joke that I had more certifications than our house had square footage. She passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Quick and brutal, the way those things sometimes are. I missed 3 days of work. Bereavement leave. Then I came back because shipments don't stop for grief. Because spent fuel doesn't care that your wife is gone. If you've ever had a boss who didn't understand the value of experience, hit that like button and subscribe. His name was Trent Holloway. 36 years old. MBA from Kellogg, which he mentioned within 90 seconds of every introduction. He became VP of Logistics in March after the previous VP, a man named Ed Castellano, who actually understood our business, took early retirement. Holloway's father sat on Meridian's board. That's how these things work. First meeting, he walked into the conference room in a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Checked his phone twice before sitting down. Didn't make eye contact with anyone over 50. I've been reviewing the divisional P&L, he said, and I have to be honest. There's significant room for optimization. Optimization, there's that word. Hazardous Logistics is running a 12% margin when corporate benchmark is 18%. That's unacceptable inefficiency. I watched him flip through his tablet. Graphs and charts, color-coded cells. The headcount in this division is bloated, he continued. We're carrying redundant personnel with inflated legacy salaries. The market has moved toward lean operations and integrated third-party logistics partnerships. He looked up. Right at me. Bill, is it? William. William, I see here you're pulling $287,000 annually, director level, for a department that handles, what, shipping? The room went quiet. 12 people around that table. People I'd worked with for decades. People who knew better than to say anything. We handle Class 7 radioactive materials transport, I said. Spent nuclear fuel, low-level waste, mixed waste streams. It's not shipping. He smiled. The kind of smile young men give when they think they're being patient. I appreciate the technical distinction, but at the end of the day, it's logistics. Getting products from point A to point B. And frankly, at your compensation level, I'd expect to see more strategic value add. That was March. By June, he'd restructured the entire logistics organization, brought in consultants, McKinsey kids who'd never seen the inside of a transport cask. They loved talking about synergies and scalable solutions and asset-light models. They had beautiful PowerPoints showing how we could outsource 60% of our operations to third-party carriers. Nobody asked me about the insurance requirements. Nobody asked about the named insured provisions. On July 15th at 2:47 p.m., Trent Holloway called me into his office. Corner office now. Ed Castellano's old space, redecorated with modern furniture and motivational art. Sarah Chen from HR stood in the corner, holding a tablet like it was a shield. William, thanks for coming in. Sure, he gestured to a chair. I sat. I'll cut to the chase. We're making some structural changes to the hazardous logistics division. As part of our modernization initiative, we're transitioning to a leaner operational model. He slid a folder across the desk. Manila. My name on the tab. Your position is being eliminated effective August 1st. This package includes 16 weeks severance, benefits continuation through December, and outplacement services. I looked at the folder. Didn't touch it. We appreciate your years of service, of course, but the company needs fresh perspectives. New energy. People who can adapt to the changing landscape. Sarah Chen's eyes were fixed on her tablet. You're making a mistake, I said. Holloway's smile flickered. Just for a second. I understand this is difficult, but the decision is final. The board has already approved the restructuring. Did the board review the insurance policy? The insurance? The liability coverage for hazardous materials transport. The policy with continental risk. He glanced at Sarah Chen. She shrugged almost imperceptibly. I'm sure our risk management team has everything in order, he said. That's not really your concern anymore. I stood up. You're right. It's not. I picked up the folder. 16 weeks severance. 34 years of my life reduced to a manila folder and a handshake. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings, Holloway said. Nothing proprietary, of course. Of course. I walked out of that office, down the gray hallway, past the servers humming their endless hum, past the break room where I'd drunk 10,000 cups of bad coffee. The security guard was a kid named Danny, 23, maybe 24. He looked like he wanted to apologize, but didn't know how. Just my pictures in the mug, I said. Won't take long. It didn't. 34 years fit into a single cardboard box. A photo of Ellen, a Navy commendation, a coffee mug that said, World's Okayest Radiation Safety Officer, that my son had given me as a joke. I signed the exit paperwork, handed over my badge, and I drove home to wait, because Trent Holloway hadn't read the insurance policy. He hadn't read Section 7, Paragraph 12, Subsection C, the named insured provision that Continental Risk had required since 1996. The provision that said the hazardous materials liability coverage was valid only while William J. Rourke served as designated compliance officer. 3 days. That's how long it would take. If you've ever had a boss who thought experience was just a line item to cut, hit that like button and subscribe. The call came on July 18th. 3 days, just like I knew it would. I was sitting on my back deck, drinking coffee and watching the sun come up over the pine trees. Ellen had planted those trees when we first bought the house, 26 years ago. They were saplings then. Now, they were 40 feet tall. My phone buzzed. Continental Risk, the caller ID said. I let it ring. Not because I didn't know what they wanted, because I did. The voicemail was from a woman named Patricia Hartley, Senior Underwriting Director. Her voice had that careful professional calm that insurance executives use when they're delivering very bad news to someone else. Mr. Rourke, this is Patricia Hartley with Continental Risk. I'm calling regarding your former employer's hazardous materials transport policy. We've been notified of a change in your employment status, and I need to discuss the implications for the named insured provisions. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. I didn't call back. Instead, I refilled my coffee and watched a cardinal land on Ellen's bird feeder, bright red against the green of the pines. 34 years. You spend that long doing something. You learn things that can't be taught. You learn which NRC inspector in Region 3 is a stickler for documentation and which one trusts your judgment. You learn that the route through Arizona requires coordination with 3 different tribal nations, and that each one has different protocols for emergency response. You learn that insurance companies don't insure the trucks or the cargo. They insure the person. The second call came 4 hours later. Different number. Meridian Energy Corporate Headquarters. I let that one ring too. The voicemail was from someone named Derek Walsh, General Counsel's office. Mr. Rourke, this is Derek Walsh from Meridian's legal department. We need to discuss an urgent matter regarding the hazardous logistics insurance coverage. Please return this call immediately. Immediately. Funny how that word appears when people suddenly realize they need something from you. I took my time that morning, drove into town for breakfast at the diner where I'd been eating eggs and bacon every Saturday for 15 years. Martha, the waitress who'd been working there almost as long as I'd been coming in, asked why I wasn't at work. Retired, I said. Retired? You? She refilled my coffee without asking. Thought they'd have to carry you out of that place feet first. So did I. She studied my face for a moment. Martha was 73 years old. She'd been a waitress for 51 of those years. She understood things about work and dignity and being pushed aside that no MBA could ever grasp. Their loss, she said. Yes, it is. By the time I got home, there were 6 more missed calls. Continental Risk, Meridian Legal, Meridian HR, a number I didn't recognize. My son Michael called around noon. He worked in IT for a hospital in Denver, far away from anything nuclear. Dad, what's going on? I got a weird call from someone at your company asking if I knew how to reach you. Former company. What? They let me go. 3 days ago. Silence on the line. Dad. I'm fine, Michael. Better than fine, actually. Why would they, after everything you've... New VP. Thought I was too expensive. That's insane. Maybe, but it's done. More silence. Then, you sound different. Not upset. I'm not upset. That's what worries me. I laughed. Actually laughed. First time in days. Don't worry about me, son. I think they're about to have much bigger problems than I do. The official notification from Continental Risk arrived on July 19th. Certified mail, return receipt requested. I didn't need to open it to know what it said, but I opened it anyway. Read every word, twice. The letter informed Meridian Energy Corporation that, pursuant to Section 7, Paragraph 12, Subsection C of their Hazardous Materials Transport Liability Policy, the named insured provision had been triggered by the termination of William J. Rourke's employment. As of August 1st, the policy's risk classification would be automatically elevated from Category B to Category E. The premium would increase from $50,000 annually to $5 million. $5 million. and that was just the premium. The letter went on to explain that the deductible would rise from $100,000 per incident to $2,500,000. Coverage limits would decrease from $500 million to $50 million. Certain exclusions would be added for routes through seismically active zones. The kicker was at the bottom. Continental Risk reserved the right to conduct a full operational review before any policy renewal, and strongly recommended that Meridian suspend all Class 7 transport operations until a qualified replacement compliance officer could be certified. A qualified replacement. They wouldn't find one. Not in time. Not at any price. Because here's what Trent Holloway didn't understand, what his McKinsey consultants never bothered to research. There are 17 people in the entire United States with the combination of certifications, state licenses, and track record necessary to serve as named insured on a hazardous materials transport policy of this scale. 12 of them work for our competitors. 3 are retired and won't come back for any salary. 1 is currently serving as a consultant to the IAEA in Vienna, and 1 is me. The certification process alone takes 4 years. The relationship building with state regulators, with NRC inspectors, with the tribal authorities, that takes a decade. You can't download institutional knowledge from the cloud. You can't outsource 34 years of being the person who answers the phone at 3 a.m., July 22nd, 1 week after my termination. I was in my garage, finally getting around to organizing the tools I'd been meaning to sort for years when I heard tires on gravel. A black BMW pulled into my driveway. I recognized it. Trent Holloway's car. He got out looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. The suit was wrinkled. The perfect hair was less perfect. I kept organizing wrenches. William, Mr. Holloway. He stood at the edge of the garage, clearly unsure whether to step inside. We need to talk. Do we? The insurance situation. There's been some miscommunication. I hung a socket set on the pegboard. Ellen had bought me that pegboard for my birthday years ago. I'd never properly installed it until now. Has there? The policy requirements. Nobody told me about the named insured provision. Did you ask? His jaw tightened. That's not the point. What is the point? The point is that we need to resolve this. The board is concerned. Continental Risk is threatening to suspend coverage entirely if we don't address the compliance officer situation. I finally turned to look at him. Really look. He was pale. Dark circles under his eyes. A small cut on his chin where he'd nicked himself shaving. The confident VP who'd smiled while eliminating my position was gone. In his place stood a man who'd just realized he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Let me ask you something, I said. When you fired me, did you review my personnel file? I reviewed the relevant metrics. But not my file, not my certifications, not the named insured documentation that HR is legally required to maintain. No answer. Did you consult with legal before eliminating my position? We followed standard HR protocols. That's not what I asked. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Did you ask anyone? Anyone at all? Why my salary was $287,000 for a shipping job? The phone buzzed again. Because I can tell you. It's because Continental Risk requires the named compliance officer to be compensated at a level commensurate with the liability exposure. It's in the policy. Section 4, Paragraph 8. The insurance company set my salary floor, not Meridian. Nobody told me that. Nobody told you because you didn't ask. You came in with your optimization strategies and your lean operational models, and you never once asked why things were structured the way they were. The phone kept buzzing. Holloway's hand trembled slightly as he reached into his pocket and silenced it. What do you want? He asked. Right now, I want to finish organizing my garage. I'm serious. What will it take to bring you back? I set down the wrench I was holding. Mr. Holloway, 3 days ago, you told me the company needed fresh perspectives, new energy, people who could adapt to the changing landscape. You were optimizing. You saw a line item and you cut it. You didn't see me. You didn't see 34 years of expertise. You saw a number that offended your MBA sensibilities. My phone rang. I glanced at it. Continental Risk again. I sent it to voicemail. So here's what I want. I want you to go back to that corner office and explain to the board how your modernization initiative just made the hazardous logistics division unprofitable overnight. I want you to explain how the $287,000 salary you found so offensive is about to become a $5 million insurance premium. I want you to tell them that every day those shipments sit idle, Meridian is in breach of contract with the Department of Energy and 3 public utility commissions. I picked the wrench back up. And then I want you to leave me alone. Because I'm retired now. Fresh perspectives and new energy, remember? That's what the company needs. Holloway stood there for a long moment. His phone started buzzing again. The board is meeting tomorrow, he said quietly. Emergency session. I'm sure it is. They're going to want to know if there's any path forward. There's always a path forward, Mr. Holloway. The question is whether you're still on it. He turned and walked back to his BMW. Started the engine. Sat there for almost a full minute before backing out of my driveway. I watched the dust settle behind his tires. Then I went inside and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff. The bottle Ellen had given me for our 25th anniversary that I'd been saving for a special occasion. This seemed like one. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on July 23rd. At 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. Meridian Corporate Headquarters. I watched it ring. 4 times. 5 times. 6. Then I reached over and declined the call. Click. The emergency board meeting lasted 4 hours and 23 minutes. I know because Martha's nephew works in the mailroom at Meridian headquarters, and word travels fast in small towns. By 7 p.m. that evening, I had 14 missed calls. Trent Holloway, Derek Walsh from legal, someone named Barbara Whitmore, who I later learned was the board chair, 2 numbers from Continental Risk, and 1 from a reporter at the State Business Journal who'd somehow caught wind of the situation. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I grilled a steak on the back deck and watched the sunset paint Ellen's pine trees orange and gold. My dog Max, a yellow lab who'd been with me since Ellen passed, sat at my feet, occasionally lifting his head when my phone buzzed. Not yet, boy, I told him. Let them stew a little longer. The formal letter arrived by courier on July 24th at 8:47 a.m. A young woman in a FedEx uniform, looking nervous as she handed me the envelope and asked me to sign. The letter was from Barbara Whitmore, board chair. 3 pages of corporate language that boiled down to a single message. Please come back. We'll give you whatever you want. Attached was a proposed compensation package. $425,000 base salary. A $150,000 signing bonus. Full restoration of all benefits and seniority. A 5-year guaranteed contract with a termination clause that would require unanimous board approval and 2 years severance. I set the letter on my kitchen table and made breakfast. The second courier arrived at 11:15 a.m. Different company this time. Same nervous energy. This letter was from Continental Risk. Patricia Hartley, the senior underwriting director. She wanted to inform me that, given the circumstances, Continental was prepared to grandfather the existing policy terms for a period of 60 days, contingent on my reinstatement as compliance officer. 60 days. That was generous. Insurance companies aren't known for generosity. But Patricia Hartley had been in this business for 30 years herself. She understood what was at stake. She understood that finding a replacement for me wasn't a matter of posting a job, listing, and interviewing candidates. It was a matter of whether those shipments could move safely or not. I called Michael that afternoon. Dad, I've been trying to reach you. I saw something online about Meridian having insurance problems. Word travels fast. Are you okay? What's happening? I told him. All of it. The firing, the insurance provision, Holloway's visit to my garage, the board meeting, the letters. Silence on the line. Dad, he finally said, you planned this. I didn't plan anything. I just knew. Knew what? Knew that eventually someone would decide I was too expensive, too old, too much of a relic from a different era. So I made sure that when that day came, I'd have options. The insurance clause. You negotiated that? Back in 1996, when Continental first started underwriting our hazardous materials operations, their actuaries understood something that MBAs never will. In this business, the person matters more than the process. You can't systematize judgment. You can't optimize experience. So you made yourself irreplaceable? No, I made the cost of replacing me visible. That's different. More silence. Then, what are you going to do? I'm going to finish my coffee, take Max for a walk, maybe drive into town for lunch at Martha's. Dad. And then I'm going to let them wait one more day. The board meeting on July 25th was scheduled for 9 a.m. I knew because Derek Walsh called at 8:15, practically begging me to attend. Mr. Rourke, the board has authorized me to tell you that all terms in yesterday's letter are negotiable. Whatever you need. Whatever it takes. I'll be there at 10, I said. Not 9, 10. But the meeting starts at... I know when the meeting starts. I'll be there at 10. I hung up. At 9:45 a.m., I put on the same suit I'd worn to Ellen's funeral. Navy blue. Classic cut. The tie she'd given me for our 30th anniversary. The one with the small anchor pattern that reminded her of my Navy days. I drove to Meridian headquarters. Parked in the visitor lot. My employee parking pass had been deactivated, of course. Walked through the main entrance. The security guard at the desk was Danny, the same kid who'd escorted me out 10 days earlier. Mr. Rourke. His eyes went wide. Sir, I'm so sorry about... Nothing to apologize for, Danny. You were doing your job. They told me to send you straight up. Conference room 1A. Thank you. I took the elevator to the top floor. Walked down the hallway I'd walked 1,000 times before. Past the portraits of former executives. Past Ed Castellano's old office, Holloway's office now, with its door firmly closed. Conference room 1A had glass walls. I could see them all before I entered. 12 people around the mahogany table. Barbara Whitmore at the head, silver hair perfectly styled. Derek Walsh with his legal pad, pen moving constantly. 3 board members I recognized, 2 I didn't. And Trent Holloway, sitting at the far end, looking like a man facing a firing squad. I pushed open the door at exactly 10 a.m. Good morning. Barbara Whitmore stood. Mr. Rourke, thank you for coming. Mrs. Whitmore, please, have a seat. There was an empty chair directly across from Holloway. I took it. I'll cut to the chase, Barbara said. We've made significant errors in judgment. The board takes full responsibility for failing to exercise proper oversight over the restructuring initiative. We'd like to discuss terms for your return. I received your letter. And I opened my briefcase, removed a single sheet of paper, slid it across the table. These are my terms. Derek Walsh grabbed the paper first. His eyes scanned it quickly, then widened. This is comprehensive. It's non-negotiable. Barbara Whitmore took the paper from Walsh, read it slowly. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her hand tighten almost imperceptibly on the page. You want a seat on the board? Voting seat. Full fiduciary authority over all safety and compliance matters. And a compensation package of $550,000, plus the signing bonus you already offered, and the 5-year guarantee, and one additional item, which is, I looked across the table at Trent Holloway. His face was gray. His hands were flat on the table, perfectly still. Mr. Holloway's termination, effective immediately. The room went silent. Holloway's voice came out strangled. You can't be serious. Section 7, paragraph 12, subsection C, I said calmly. The named insured provision. You should have read it before you fired me. This is personal. This is revenge. No, Mr. Holloway. This is risk management. I turned back to Barbara Whitmore. 3 days ago, your VP of Logistics made a unilateral decision that exposed this company to $5 million in annual insurance premiums, potential breach of contract with the Department of Energy, and regulatory sanctions from 3 public utility commissions. He did this without consulting legal, without reviewing the relevant policy documents, and without understanding the operational realities of the division he was restructuring. I folded my hands on the table. That's not optimization. That's negligence. And if the board chooses to retain someone with that judgment in a leadership position, then I'm not interested in being part of this organization. Holloway's chair scraped back. You can't, Trent. Barbara Whitmore's voice was ice. Sit down. He sat. She looked around the table, at the board members, at Derek Walsh, at Holloway. The board will take a brief recess to discuss Mr. Rourke's terms. Take your time, I said. I'll be in the lobby. I stood and walked out. The recess lasted 18 minutes. When Derek Walsh came to get me, his face told me everything I needed to know. The board has accepted your terms, he said, all of them. Including Holloway? Mr. Holloway has been asked to resign, effective immediately. Security is assisting him with his personal belongings. I nodded, didn't smile. There was nothing to smile about. One more thing, Walsh said. Mrs. Whitmore asked me to give you this. He handed me a small box. Inside was a nameplate. William J. Rourke, Sr., Vice President, Safety and Compliance Board of Directors. Welcome back, sir. I walked back into that conference room at 10:47 a.m. Took my seat at the table, signed the documents Derek Walsh had prepared, and then I did something I hadn't done in 34 years. I took the rest of the day off. That evening, I sat on my back deck with Max at my feet and 3 fingers of Ellen's anniversary bourbon in my hand. The sun was setting behind the pine trees she'd planted. Cardinals were singing in the branches. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Saw the news. Congratulations, Dad. Mom would be proud. I typed back, taking the weekend off, driving up to visit next month. Maybe catch one of your softball games. You never take weekends off. I do now. I set the phone down and scratched Max behind the ears. 34 years. 0 incidents. That was my legacy. Not the title, not the salary, not the board seat. The work. The shipments that moved safely across the country while people slept, never knowing, never worrying. The spent fuel rods that went from cooling pools to storage facilities without harming a single person. That's what Trent Holloway never understood. The salary wasn't the cost of moving cargo from point A to point B. The salary was the cost of all the things that didn't happen, the accidents that were prevented, the emergencies that were managed, the 3 a.m. phone calls that got answered by someone who knew exactly what to do. Sometimes value isn't visible on a spreadsheet. Sometimes the most important work is the work no one notices. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who holds everything together. I raised my glass to the sunset, to Ellen's trees, to 34 years of doing the job right. Then I finished my bourbon and went inside to make dinner. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and ring that notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.